we have updated snowfall projections for this weekend. Severe weather out east. And what's our weather pattern look like ahead as we move through November and get into December? It's November 6th, 2025. Let's get into the weather updates. Beginning with these honestly wild snowfall projections from the Euro out east. This is the only model that really brings snow down into Kentucky, into Tennessee. Look at this, into northern Mississippi, northern Georgia. But this isn't as the storm moves through. This is after that low pressure system moves through the Midwest and then out of New England. The cold air sinks, and the Euro still thinks there's going to be moisture available there to put snow down into these areas. I will say though, the European model is the only model that sees this. Although, as I've said, the European model does pretty good with cold temperatures and snow forecasting as we get into the fall and winter months. By the way, if you like this type of content, I upload videos like this every day and I stream every day to answer all of your weather related questions. So if you could hit that subscribe and notification bell, it is a huge help to the channel. Back to the video. So let's quickly take a step back here and look at the future reflectivity of the latest European run. This is the 000 run that came out last night. All right, so we currently have some cold air sinking into the Northeast and really the upper Midwest. High elevation snow, low elevation rain. Again, it's a little bit early in the season. If this were later in the fall season and more into winter, you'd probably be getting a lot of snow out along the New England coast with this system. The Northwest is continuing to get pummeled by rain and snowfall, although as we get into the weekend, it does look like that will let up. Here we get into Friday and Saturday, and you can see we're going to see a ridge beginning to settle in, so likely very above average temperatures out there for a while. I did want to point out here Friday as well, you can see our low pressure system up to the north and the tail end of it moving through the Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley, Mississippi Valleys out east. There is a severe threat here that we're going to talk about a little bit later on into the video. As we move into Saturday and Sunday, here's the cold air that's going to try to meet up with our shortwave trough to turn a lot of that cold rain into snow. Now, the European is still struggling to see that cold air getting there quick enough for places like Des Moines, Chicago, Minneapolis. Although if you're really hoping for snow in those areas with this system, don't worry, there are some other models that show this as snow moving through your region. And I think as we see our short range models come out today and tonight, we'll have a much better idea on if that's actually going to be the case. Now, as we get into Sunday afternoon and evening, here's where things get interesting. We get a northwesterly flow across the Great Lakes. What does this mean? Well, maybe a lot of lake effect snow for Chicago. And according to the Euro, we may have some moisture down here available to put a nice blanket of snow across portions of the Ohio Valley here. You can see as we get into Monday morning, this moisture is still funneling down to the south. And if there's one thing that's for sure is it's going to be cold enough here for snow. You are going to have a very chilly Monday. Getting into Tuesday and Wednesday, that trough moves out, it's out of our hair, and we get a little bit of a zonal flow, so more average temperatures from the west to the east coast, but you can see our jet to the north is still bringing a little bit of moisture and cold air to the upper Midwest and upper New England. Pushing out a little bit farther as we get into November 12th and November 13th, this is next Wednesday and Thursday, we continue to see our jet pumping cold air and moisture into the upper Midwest and New England. So I do think we'll remain a little bit cooler up here to the north, although I will say the Climate Prediction Center really does think this region over the next 6 to 10 days is going to be well below average. I think if we push out a little bit farther, we're going to be looking at below average temperatures more out into this region. I think it's going to include the upper Midwest. But here we go, getting into late next week. That cold air is continuing to funnel in before we potentially get another ridge that wants to settle in across the plains, and we get some more moisture funneling in to California. You can see out here, it's a little bit dry as we move through next week, but as we get towards next weekend, here comes all of that rain and high elevation snow for the west. Again, a large low pressure system moving in off the Pacific. That's out November 14th, 15th, 16th. Now from here, we're getting into La La Land. I will say this, the GFS sees another winter storm out here towards November 16th and 17th. We don't have model consensus yet though. But here it is, and no, this is not our weekend snowstorm. This is what the GFS thinks we could have next weekend. A very similar situation, this cold air moving in from the north, a shortwave trough ejecting across the plains and out east, except for the American model wants to really tilt and intensify the system as it moves across the Midwest and as it moves out east. So if we were to see this play out like this would actually be a more intense snowstorm. But again, this is 200 plus hours out. We're going to wait for model consensus. I think the east is going to remain pretty cold through the rest of November. Our teleconnections see a negative AO, negative NAO setting up and holding for quite a while here. So I know there are some suggestions of ridging and more long-term warmth as we push through November, but I don't really see that happening. I do want to show you some of the updated snow possibilities for this weekend snowstorm. This is probably the safest to look at. This is the National Blended model, so it's going to take basically every model and average it out. One thing I've noticed as we move forward in time is it's being more aggressive with snow down here through portions of the Ohio Valley, getting a little bit farther south, especially here in Ohio. If you're in Chicago and you're a snow lover, you're hoping the NAM 12K is correct, because the NAM 12K puts a streak of snow directly through Chicago, maybe even up to half a foot. But our Canadian short range just leaves a hole of snow here, which I'm not really buying that at all. Especially when you consider all this cold air that's going to sink in after that low pressure system moves off to the northeast. I think you're going to get lake effect down in Chicago, at least a little bit. Interestingly enough, our European AI actually gives us a chance. It shows some runs that put snow down Baltimore, Philly, New York City. I wouldn't get your hopes up, but just know there are members out there that are showing it. I don't think it's going to happen. But right now I'm going to tell you, if I had to guess, what model I think is the most correct. I actually do like how the Rufus model handles this system. I do believe as we get the 12Z today, it will show some of that snow funneling into the back end. I don't think the European's completely crazy to put snow farther down into Illinois, Indiana, maybe even into central Kentucky and then through portions of Ohio on the back end of this system, but I don't fully agree with the snow desert that it basically has out through Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa as the system moves through on Sunday. Although I will also say this, I would probably put these snow totals down an inch and a half. I think these are a little bit high. And by the way, on the back end of this system, it's not impossible to get some snow flurries out there through the Twin Cities and then through Wisconsin as well. I do think we'll see 2 to 4 inches up and down inner New England with potentially 6 to 9 inches up in the higher elevations, maybe even a foot in some areas locally. And don't forget, right after I post this, I'm going to hop on live stream and I'm going to look at all of this with you again, and we'll talk about how I think things could adjust over the next 24 to 48 hours. But now let's get into severe weather. Here's our severe weather outlook for this Friday. Large marginal risk stretching through portions of Mississippi, Alabama, northwestern Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, southern Ohio, and western West Virginia. With that target slight risk right through Nashville, portions of south central Kentucky, and then central Tennessee. Most of the time, there's a wind and hail threat with a severe setup. The tornado threat, though, is not always guaranteed, but we do have one with the severe weather tomorrow. Through really central Kentucky, central Tennessee, and then out through eastern Mississippi and most of Alabama, we do have a 2% tornado risk. I've noticed a downtrend in the severe potential tomorrow, and you could even see that the SPC shrank their slight risk zone. Here we go. This would be as we get into the late afternoon, evening hours, really the evening hours. We have some strong to severe thunderstorms moving through Kentucky and then beginning to spark down here through Tennessee, and then potentially even down here through southern Mississippi, and this may try to connect up with our frontal boundary. And while we do see a little bit of a discrete mode setting up through portions of Tennessee and potentially Kentucky throughout the late evening and morning, it's not looking as aggressive as it was yesterday. If you're in or around this region, it is possible to get some spin-ups. It is possible to get some tornadoes out here tomorrow, so I would just be weather aware. So what's our weather pattern going to look like the rest of the month of November and as we get into December? Well, here's our European weekly outlook, and I've been looking through these teleconnections, and I'm right now kind of agreeing with what the Euro is showing here. Obviously, we have a big dip in our AO. This is our Arctic oscillation that we're looking at here. This is why we're having this Arctic blast, all of this cold air sink down, even down as far as the Gulf. And as we move forward in time, this AO is expected to remain negative. What does that mean? Well, when you have a negative AO, typically your polar jet is disturbed and weakened, and you get some of that cold air dumping down into the states as a result. A lot of times what promotes this negative AO is a strong Aleutian high or Greenland high that starts to kind of put pressure up against the Arctic low, causing it to wobble, causing it to slow, and we definitely have that high pressure and blocking currently out over Greenland. But again, looking ahead here, our AO is kind of expected to remain negative as we move through the rest of November, even through December. You know, looking out here, this kind of gets into the la la land territory of the teleconnections. They have it too. The cold air is still favored out east, at least through the rest of November. And a negative NAO is expected to try and stick around as well. You can see it trying to get back up towards neutral as we get towards the end of November. But also a lot of times a negative NAO can actually influence that negative AO. They can be correlated. I do think a lot of areas out east are going to get some snowfall earlier than you're used to seeing it. I appreciate you guys watching this video. If you like this type of content, don't forget to follow and subscribe. Again, I make content like this every single morning. And then after I post it, I usually hop on a live stream for 1 to 2 hours to answer all of your weather related questions. And don't forget, the link to my Discord is right down in the description. Tons of weather enthusiasts in there. It's a great community and lots of weather knowledge and up-to-date information. Again, I appreciate you watching this video, and I'll see you in the next video or in the next live stream.